Hello, everyone. Today I'm here to discuss with all of you how the stream of consciousness writing style is formally created in Virginia Woolf's The New Dress. Looking to Lorden, I would say that her chapter on the self-editing narrator relates the most to this story, as we will see Mabel, our protagonist, constantly edit her descriptions of things. However, the story is told in third person, meaning that the narrator is not necessarily self-editing, but the idea of doubtful accuracy is still there. Though this story eliminates the idea of character bias in a standard retelling and uses the formal choices to create an anxious character, doubting what they truly mean to say about a subject because of their fear of social expectations. And while her metaphors of the fly and the dress are integral to the story's meaning, our focus is on the creation of stream of consciousness, specifically looking at how the story constantly replaces certain words, phrases, in the form of a list. I didn't know what to call this technique, so I have decided on the title of descriptor replacements, which, regardless of the result, aim to define the character's immensely doubtful and anxious actions and thoughts. In this four-page story, there are over 50 instances where descriptor replacements happen, obviously hinting at it being an integral part to the understanding of the story. Just looking at these two examples here gives you an idea of what we're looking for. So if you look here, there's basically a list, followed by the actual subject the list is talking about. So the fly is dowdy, decrepit, horribly dingy, old. There's also down here the idea that this feeling that she's having is one of humiliation and agony and self-loathing and effort and passionate ups and downs of feeling. These are lists. And so there's basically a list, sometimes complementary, sometimes contradictive. But regardless of how it looks or the purpose behind it, each descriptor replacement has the goal of creating an anxious, doubtful character. And so when we look, it's gonna work. There we go. Okay. So these are the different styles of descriptor replacements that I've kind of noticed and I was able to discern. But regardless of what happens, every single one of these, despite the different purpose it has, its goal is to assist the creation of this anxious, doubtful character, with a constant replacing editing of ideas because she's being inundated by this constant stream of thoughts. There are these three styles that I would like to point out. So the first kind attempts to clarify. This is circumstance clarification. It attempts to add clarification, which enables the reader to understand the circumstances surrounding Mabel. Sometimes they are action driven, and other times they are revelations on what matters most in Mabel's circumstance. The second kind acts like addition. A quick one to two word list is given, usually with synonyms to add meaning to the subject. These additions help to subtly define the subject with minor additions to meaning with each synonym. In order for the subject to make sense, every word in the list is needed and helps to paint a clear picture as Mabel's narrator finds the best words to explain her feelings. The third one is the most important one, the one that we see sometimes minimally, but it still really matters. This denotes an evolution in description. This evolution includes much longer items in a list, sometimes full sentences. The meaning of the subject is not simply clarified or added on. Instead, each item of the non-synonymous list coalesces and attempts to, by the end, create a new meaning altogether for the subject. Now, let's go ahead, let's look at the first paragraph of our story so that we can try to understand this. So once again, the circumstance clarification is in yellow, the synonymous addition is in purple, and the descriptor evolution is in green. So if we have a look at the circumstance part, this is attempting to clarify something specific about Mabel's current circumstances. So if we take these first two ones, we have the focus on the appliances that Mabel is interacting with, tidying and improving hair, complexion, and clothes. Seems subtle, but I mean, this whole thing is about her anxiety of her cloth. So adding that last part here with clothes definitely helps to clarify what really matters, even more so in this last part where she's trying to go away to the far end of the room and specifically to a shaded corner. possibly hinting at this idea that she's ashamed and wants to hide within the shaded darkness of it all. Now I'm going to skip to the part here. If you look at the synonymous additions portion, it's really just a few words or a couple of words in a list over and over, usually an and. So how dull to show off. All this now seemed unutterably silly, paltry, and provincial. These words, while the same, have evolutions in meaning, but aren't trying to evolve the idea. They're adding onto the overall understanding of the entire circumstance. Same thing with all this had been absolutely destroyed, shown up, exploded the moment that she came into Miss Dalloway's drawing room. Now, in green, the descriptor evolution, these are longer parts. Sometimes it's divided by semicolons, but not always. This is where the purpose is to help evolve meaning into something completely different. And usually each part of the list is they don't relate. They're non-synonymous. So if you take her own appalling inadequacy, her cowardice, her mean water-sprinkled blood are three completely different things, but they all work together in order to evolve the meaning of everything that had worked to depress her. And we see this throughout our story. If we go into, for instance, just paragraph 5, we see this use of evolution, but no longer with semicolons, as if she were crossing herself, as if she were trying to find some spell to annul this pain, to make this agony endurable. This evolution of meaning, focusing first with trying to cross herself, then this denial moving then into a hopefulness that she's trying to get across the annulment of her pain, then finally coalescing into this idea that she's in agony, she's going to be in agony, cannot avoid it, and she just simply has to endure it and find a way to do so. Along with then our other aspects of circumstance clarification and synonymous addition. For instance, numb, chill, frozen, dumb, dancing, fluttering, skimming, all these just additions to meaning about the subject. But if we have a look here, Mabel finds herself seeing everyone else as dragonflies, butterflies, but not just that, but as beautiful insects, clarifying the circumstances of everyone else around her and that she herself is simply just a fly. Now, as we get to the end of our story, as we reach this inevitable conclusion, the inevitable realization that our character Mabel is going to have, we do see a change. We see a shift. In moments before this, the descriptor replacements were starting to lessen, um, especially in paragraph 17, but we do see one specific kind of descriptor come into play. So if we look here, we see in the beginning, right before she was on that crest of a wave, or her realization, we see the use of just a simple addition: the fretful, weak, unsatisfactory mother, wobbly wife, very clear or very bold, or more one thing than the other. They're simple additions. But then we see a change, and she is now evolving as she is changing. And so we see, especially here, the use of separate evolutions, separate clauses ended with specific types of punctuation. Here, there's instead of a comma, instead of a semicolon, it's a exclamation point. This gives us time to digest each individual part that then allows us to create an evolution of meaning. And once we reach the end, we have a completely new idea than what we ended up starting with. But that was deplorable. That was not to be endured. That made her feel ashamed of herself, leading into the paragraph 19, which contains the practically entirety, like the entirety of an evolution. Because as we see in this line just in the middle, she would be transformed. She would find some wonderful, helpful, astonishing book quite by chance, a book by a clergyman, by an American no one had ever heard of, or she would walk down the Strand and drop so accidentally into a hall where a miner was telling about the life in the pit, and suddenly she would become a new person. She would be absolutely transformed. She would wear a uniform. She would be called Sister Somebody. She would never give a thought to the clothes again. Now, this is fundamentally different than circumstance clarification because you should notice the use of would. Instead of it actually happening to Mabel, this is something that is a prediction. This is something that is in the future, something that would happen once she has transformed and not has happened or is happening to her. And so instead is an evolution. We see this growth in the character. And while yes, she near the end is still anxious of her social surroundings, she has a fundamental awareness that stems from that constant stream, that constant flow of thoughts that has evolved and allowed her to really start thinking fully about herself. But that is only done through being able to change, being able to adjust, and add, evolve, or clarify her meanings throughout the actual story. Now, this then correlates to what I do want you guys to do for our little discussion prompt. I'm only going to have you look at paragraph 17 in order to try this. So I want you to reread paragraph 17. You can have a look at it's at page 4. This is like the quote to get it started and the ending quote so you know exactly where it is. As you're reading, I want you to look for examples of descriptor replacements and consider how they influence the stream of consciousness writing style. I don't care if you end up like labeling each kind of style, but I just wanted to help you see the different types of things that we can see and what they might do for for the stream of consciousness. And so afterwards, for our little writing prompt, you are simply going to write a reflection on what you noticed and your thoughts on how this formal technique impacts the stream of consciousness writing style. And that's pretty much it. So thank you guys for listening. And please let me know if you have any questions.